Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome here inside East Gymnasium at Fort Lee for today's cross-divisional showdown in the Big North Conference between the Ramsey Rams, 9-5 on the season, and the Fort Lee Bridgmen, 10-8 overall this fall. Hello, everyone. I'm Dan Long. So glad that you could join us for this edition of Bridgmen Volleyball on the Fort Lee Athletics YouTube channel. This is a big one in terms of power points on the line, as Fort Lee is trying to snap a two-match losing streak on the season. A win here today would certainly help their cause of trying to secure one of the top 8 spots in the field of 16 for the North 1 Group 3 sectional. As Fort Lee is right now just teetering on the outside, coming in today ranked number 9 overall in the power point settings. So a win against Ramsey, a team 9-5 on the season, would be a big-time help to the resume for the postseason for Coach Ziemba's side. The two head coaches for the respective sides, Aaron Schroeder leading the Rams of Ramsey, led the Rams to the first round of the North 1 Group 2 sectional playoffs last spring, and Coach John Ziemba, who led Fort Lee to their first sectional championship since 1988 last spring. Fort Lee's going to be on the left side of your screen in the black, orange, and white. And in the white, gold, and blue is Ramsey. As we're underway, the first service of the day is for Fort Lee. And the point is going to be awarded to Fort Lee. It looks like it might be a net violation against Ramsey. We're just trying to tap it over for the opening point of the afternoon. So Fort Lee garners that opening point here today to lead 1-0. As Nicole Coelho, the senior, once again will be doing the serving. So now it looks like they've corrected it, and they're now giving the point to Ramsey after the initial call seemed to have been for Fort Lee. They changed that, so the Rams get the opening points of the opening set. Met at the net there. As you can see, Ramsey with a size advantage this afternoon, and there's the kill. Delivered by Jessica Spirenberg, the senior number 12, one of the leaders for this Ramsey side. She's one to watch, as she has the height, the strength, and the velocity on the end of all of her shots. 2-0 lead for Ramsey here in set number 1. Pagan in front of the net, and she brings it home for the point. Nice job there by Sophia Pagan, the junior. Right in front of the net, not to be denied, using that vertical leap and that accuracy to finish it off. Fort Lee is coming off a tough one last time out. As seen here on our broadcast against Cliffside Park, they lost 2-0 in their first loss of the year in league play. As that time, there's a service ace for Fort Lee, as Ramsey not able to return that one as it went out of bounds. Was served by Luciana Casal. 2-2 the score. And there's a non-returnable. As Spirenberg again, she gets to it. Number 12 is very tough to defend against, as she hammered that one home for Ramsey, who retake the lead now at 3-2. But Fort Lee had a chance to win that match against arch rival Cliffside Park, just didn't have their usual stuff. We'll see if they'll come to play against a tough opponent here today, as Pagan that time a little too long to the far side, and that's going to be another point for Ramsey. And a new addition to Coach Ziemba's side is a familiar face for those around Fort Lee, as that's going to be a service ace for the Rams. They extend their lead now to 5-2. Number 23, Anaya Jones, the senior, is back in the lineup after missing all of last spring with a knee injury in the beginning portions of this year. There's Jones with the first touch of it, saved by her teammates, pops straight up in the air, and it eventually ends as the point for Fort Lee. Not how you draw it up, but it was the hustle there. Jones mishit it at first. She was saved by Pagan and then by Coelho, and it got over and snuck in just inside the front line against Ramsey. 5-3 with Nutrwani now serving. Nutrwani getting a piece of that one. Jones tried to extend out and save that one, but she just got a piece of it, and it goes out of play for a Ramsey point. The Rams leading now 6-3. So this is the first action of the year Anaya Jones, who again suffered a knee injury and was out all of last spring, First time she's back in the fold here in her senior campaign. Spirenberg gets it over with a backwards hit at the net. And that time, a point for Ramsey. As Conti was trying to do something with it in front of the net, but she was denied, could not get it up and over in time. So a timeout's going to be taken by Coach Ziemba in Fort Lee to talk things over with his team. Ramsey jumping out to a 7-3 advantage here in set number 1. This match starting a little later than the 4:15 start time because of Ramsey coming here a little late, probably due to the traffic in the area. The last meeting between these two sides came back in 2019 on October 11th. Ramsey won 2-0 and 2-0 at Ramsey. These two sides back in 2019 were actually divisional rivals. Then last season, the American division was shortened and made smaller to just have the usual sides of Fort Lee, Ridgeville Park, Dumont, Cliffside Park, and Dwight Morrow. As now Ramsey plays in the Big North Patriot Division with Riverdale, Pascack Hills, Westwood, and Mahwah. There's an ace right at the timeout for Spirenberg. Ramsey extends their lead now to 5, 8-3. Spirenberg delivers. Borisov got the first piece of it, but again, Fort Lee not able to recapture the possession to return it. And it's going to be another ace there for Spirenberg. 9-3 advantage. Spirenberg once again. That's going to be another service ace for Jessica Spirenberg, as she is just kind of pinpointing her accuracy, floating that all over the back line, not in the same vicinity, not in the same spot each time. That time a low lining one hits into the net, so that ends that run of sorts for Ramsey. But their lead is currently at 6, 10-4. This is kind of what happened against Fort Lee in their last home match against Cliffside Park on Monday, that they fell behind in these early runs and could not find their way to claw out of the deficit. Let's see if they can do that here and make those adjustments. As Kathleen Murtaugh, the junior, set to serve for Fort Lee, down 10-4. Ramsey gets it over to the near side as Pinsari got it over backwards. Setting up Pinsari over, and that time she goes a little too long with it. Out of bounds to the far side, back-to-back points now for Fort Lee. After Bridgman pulled back to within 5 at 10-5. Murtaugh again with the service. Drops that one in for the ace as the seas parted in the back line there for Ramsey. Francesca Gorini, number 8, the libero in the dark blue, was kind of thinking that might have had a teammate around her. Instead, it just fell behind her for the easy points. Murtaugh serving it to the far side. Ramsey not able to get it over. So Fort Lee answers with a run of their own. They now pull back to within 3 at 10-7. Bridgman going on a run since Kathleen Murtaugh began the service. Down the line, saved by Borisov, and it falls in. And now momentum on the side of the Bridgman. They've made a run to get back to within 2 of Ramsey, 10-8 now. As Murtaugh continues to serve. That time forcing Gorini to make the diving play and eventually dropped in just behind the front line for the point. As Borisov was playing behind there and could not get to that open spot in time after it was dropped in between her and Casal. 11-8 now. The lead for Ramsey as the Rams go back to the service. To the near side, and that one is popped long out of play over that far side corner. 11-9 now, the deficit facing Coach Ziemba's side as he's clapping his hands, willing his team on. As Catherine Borisov, the freshman, serves with her left hand. Set up and spiked down in front. Bonnie Hira, number 9. An imposing figure on the front line for Ramsey, only a junior. But you could see her size in front. She easily finished that one off with the easiest of spikes. 12-9, now Ramsey leading and serving here. As that goes out of bounds on the far sideline as Nicole Nutriwani, the libero, wearing her orange top for Fort Lee, just laid off that service. As now it is 12-10, the deficit facing the Bridgmen. Ramsey has led for the majority of this opening set, but the Bridgmen of Fort Lee have gone on a run to pull back to within 2. As Mia Frankel, the sophomore, has come into the game now to serve. Frankel skims just the top of the net. Nearly got the ace. Returns, but now the whistles. It should be a point, and there is the point for Frankel and for Fort Lee. 12-11 now. As the Bridgmen playing much more to their standards and much more like what they normally do compared to that 2-set loss against Cliffside Park the other day. And there's another service ace for Fort Lee, and Frankel in a timeout being asked for by Coach Erin Schroeder of Ramsey, as she wants to settle her team down, much like Coach Ziemba did earlier on in this set when it was all Ramsey and the Rams jumped out to a big lead. So Fort Lee has fought their way back to tie things up at 12-12 here in our opening set of play in this cross-divisional showdown in the Big North Conference. In looking at the playoff pictures, we're closing in on the end of the regular season late in the month of October. Ramsey competes in North 1 Group 2. They sit right now in 7th place in the power points, with Demarest, a league rival, one of the powerhouse programs in New Jersey, sitting as the top overall seed, with Sparta, Riverdale, Jefferson, Old Tappan, and Pascack Valley ahead of Ramsey. We'll get to the playoff picture and what's looking like it will be some of the top seeds for Fort Lee later on in this match, as Frankel and Fort Lee looking for their first lead in a while. Set up to the near side, Goris just getting it over, and that's sent home again by Hira. A couple of kills here for Bonnie Hira up front. The junior middle back blocker finishing that one off in the opening. It's now 13-12, Ramsey back with the lead. As they look to serve here, Casey Rue getting the first piece of it. Nutriwani just could not curl it up and over in time. As that'll fall for the point for Ramsey. Back-to-back points for the Rams. 14-12 now the lead. Haven't changed the score yet. As laying off that to the near side, that'll go out of bounds. Right now the scoreboard reads 13 all. As Fort Lee serves here with Nicole Coelho. Coelho, what a serve! Skimming that just up and over the edge of the net for the ace. And Fort Lee with the advantage now at 14-13. Coelho again with that serve. That time does not get the bounce that they were looking for. Cut into the bottom of the nets, and that leads to the tie now at 14 all with Ramsey back to the service. Here in set number 1. Now the libero, Francesca Guarini serving for Ramsey, and Pagan finishing it off in front. Draws the oohs and ahs from the nice crowd of students that have assembled here in East Gymnasium to cheer on their Bridgmen. 15-14 the lead now for Fort Lee. Casal back to serve. Casal gets the ace. Fort Lee has been adept at serving just over the edge and the top of the net here so far this afternoon. They've had the accuracy on these low serves. That time, Casal hits it into the net. So Fort Lee will lose the service, but will still lead 16-15. Again, valuable power points on the line for both teams here this afternoon. Anaya Jones, that one hot to handle. Ramsey getting a piece of it, though. The Rams returning it. Nutrwani setting up Casal, setting up Borisov. Borisov, the lefty, goes a little too long on that one. They're going to say no. It's deflected off of the hands of Ramsey, and that'll be a point now for Fort Lee. The referee in the chair is saying that it was deflected and should be a point for Fort Lee. Ramsey vehemently is protesting that that was not the case and that no one got a piece of it. The official on the floor is now conferring with the scores table, and it is going to be a point for Fort Lee. So Fort Lee getting that benefit of the call there on the deflection. 17-16 now with Nutrwani set to start the service here for Fort Lee. Spirenberg is vehemently saying she did not get a piece of that, but there's no instant replay, no video review in high school, as you see at the college level, to see if that was actually touched. So the benefit goes to Fort Lee, and that time double hit against Fort Lee gives the point and the service over to Ramsey. As a timeout taken here by Fort Lee and Coach John Ziemba, as the Bridgmen leading the Ramsey Rams currently by a score of 17-16. Now looking at the playoff picture for the home-sided Bridgmen. It was a tough loss against Cliffside Park, especially because that would have been valuable power points for Coach Ziemba's side if they had procured their second victory of the season against their arch rivals in the Red Raiders. So in looking at the North 1 Group 3 power points right now heading into today's game, Wayne Valley sits atop this section, followed by Roxbury, Morris Knolls, Northern Highlands, Tenafly, and Fairlawn. Mount Olive ranking number 7, and moving ahead of Fort Lee into 8th place would be Wayne Hills. Fort Lee right now occupying the 9th position in the bracket. And again, if you're in the top 8, you get to host at least one game in the state sectional playoffs. So Fort Lee knows what they have to do, and a win here today would be huge in that effort. Setting up Nutrwani, drops it off, deflected, and gets the points as Fort Lee doing a nice job out of the timeout by Nicole Nutrwani, the libero, of dropping in that point for Fort Lee to extend the Bridgmen lead now to 18-16 here in set number 1. It was all Ramsey early on. Fort Lee rallied and have had the better of the play in the second half of this set. As Fort Lee subs on to the floor, Casey Rue. Murtaugh back to serve. She was that turning point and that player that really helped Fort Lee get back in this set. Conti in front of the net, got it deflected originally. And there's a lift call against Ramsey, and another point for Fort Lee. So momentum shifting here in East Gym, as it's now a 19-16 lead for Fort Lee. Clawing closer and closer to an opening set win, but that serve goes out of bounds to the far side wing. That'll be a service error and a point going over to Ramsey, 19-17. Nutrwani setting up Murtaugh to the far side, dropping that one off in the front. Spirenberg getting to it. And this time, mishit there by the junior, Hira. As that goes out of bounds long, 20-17 now the lead for Fort Lee. 5 points away are the Bridgmen from taking the opening set. Borisov, the freshman, lining up as Spirenberg gets low. Blocked at the net by Conti. But they're going to say that that was into the net. The violation against Conti, hitting the net as she was going up for it. Might have been also a double hit. So the point goes for Ramsey. That was a meeting of the minds at the top of the net between Conti and Hira. Ramsey serving, Rue getting a piece of it. Now back to Rue, lining it over to the near side. Spirenberg trying to set up her teammates. Hira, as Nutrwani getting a piece of it initially. Conti getting it up and over and getting the point for Fort Lee. This is great volleyball action between both these sides after that long volley. Again, number 29, Alexandria Conti, the 5'8 junior middle blocker, has been effective inside despite the height advantage for Ramsey on the other side of the floor. 21-18 now the lead for Fort Lee. As Coach Ziemba looks like he was about to get ready to sub on Frankel, but we'll see what the conference is here. If it was going to be a potential sub coming into the game, but Coach Ziemba electing to use Conti instead of Mia Frankel as the one serving. And Conti mishits that one as that goes as the service error, and possession and the points going over to Ramsey. 21-19 now the lead. As Conti comes out, Nutrwani comes in, immediately makes the diving defensive play. Rue gets it over. Now Ramsey trying to play offense here, and that one is finished off by Jessica Spirenberg. The size and strength on that finish, and Ramsey is pulled back to within one at 21-20. Nutrwani to the front. Murtaugh now to that far side edge. As Ramsey looks to tie it up, Nutrwani again got a piece of it, but that was a little too hot to handle. That goes out of bounds. Ramsey's gone on a run late here in the first set. They've tied this up at 21 all. Trying to retake the lead here. Murtaugh sending it back over for Fort Lee. In front, dug out there by Ivazoglu. But again, Ramsey with the momentum on its side. 22-21. They've retaken the lead late here in set number one. Murtaugh setting that one a little too wide and long, and here comes Ramsey. The Rams in control now by two, 23-21. They're 2 points away from taking down set number one after both teams have been trading the leads back and forth. Pagan, nice decision with that drop shot, but Ramsey recovers it. Great defensive hustle play. In front, the scramble ensues. Now Pagan sending it backwards over the net. Spirenberg falling backwards, still with enough juice on it to make that fall inside for a 24-21 lead. And we're at set point now for Ramsey. Fort Lee's got to dig down deep here. Pagan trying to drop it off, and they'll get the point as Pagan doing a nice job serving that one far. Now the referees, is it going to be a point for Fort Lee or Ramsey? The way that Ramsey was checking off the floor, they were kind of expecting that one to be wide, but it's 24-22 as Fort Lee has fallen behind after Ramsey has taken a late lead here. Again, the initial call by the official was for a point for Fort Lee, but it looks like it instead should have been a point for Ramsey, and it looks like the way that they're acting, that will be the case. So the first set goes to the visiting Rams of Ramsey High School, taking set number one against Fort Lee, as we will take a timeout here to get ready for set number two, as you're watching Fort Lee Bridgman Volleyball here on YouTube. Welcome back, everybody, inside East Gymnasium, about to start set number 2. So again, with the official on the ladder, he initially had made the sign that it was going to be a point for Fort Lee, but it was corrected. That was a shot out of bounds on the far side, so that ended that opening set 25-21 in favor of Ramsey as we head to set number 2 here in this matchup. The first time since 2019 that Ramsey and Fort Lee are taking on one another. Again, a non-divisional matchup for both sides, but one that still will be important in terms of playoff seeding. Pagan does a great job of getting that over 3 different defenders trying to form a wall in front, as Pagan's return cannot be returned by Ramsey, and now it's a 1-0 lead for Fort Lee to start off set number 1. Or set number 2, excuse me. As Coelho will start with the service. Blocked in front, and that's not going to be returnable there by Nutrowani, who got a piece of it. 1-1 the score here in set number 2. Ramsey 9-5 on the season. Fort Lee 10-8 overall. As Guarini set to serve this one up for Ramsey. The libero on the side of the Rams. Serves that one just inside that far side wing for the ace. Beautiful placement there for Ramsey. 2-1 lead now for the Rams. Casal setting up Pagan in front. Pagan has been so savvy with a couple of those shots that she has just waited a little bit, waited for the front line to try to block, and she doesn't try to sky over them, just pushes it over to the left side. Good placement on that drop shot. 2-2 now. As Casal back to serve. Pagan rejecting in front as Spirenberg tried to give Pagan a little of her own medicine. Pagan not fooled at all as she rejects her in front and eventually leads to the Fort Lee point. 3-2 lead now for the Bridgemen. Trickles off the top of the net. Ramsey tries their darndest to return it, but they can't. Little luck on the side there for Luciana Casal. Again, just skimming it enough to get it over. And by doing so, it takes a little of the speed off of the shot. And Ramsey was not able to return it. 4-2 lead for Fort Lee. And Casal drops it in on the far side. Back-to-back aces now for number 12 in black. Fort Lee racing out to a 3-point advantage at 5-2. Fort Lee had a great run of sorts in the middle portion of that opening set. Just couldn't finish it off, though, as Ramsey rallied late to eventually secure the win. There's another Casal ace. Luciana Casal, the 5'4" senior, getting the job done right now for Coach Ziemba's side, who have raced out to a 6-2 advantage to start set number 2. Need to win set number 2 to force a third set. And there's Spirenberg. Not playing around, finishing it off with an easy kill. The spike finish makes it 6-3. Coach Ziemba was trying to instruct his team before today's match to keep it away from number 12 in white. We could see why. As Anaya Jones gets it over. Again, this is Jones' first game back in the lineup in over 2 seasons. As that one goes long for Ramsey. 7-3 lead now for Fort Lee. Nutrowani's serve eats up Pensari over to the far side. As Fort Lee serving up the aces here in set number 2. Extending their lead now to 5 at 8-3. Serves it to the backside. Guarini, her libero counterpart, they got in a piece of it, and Fort Lee has that trickle one off them to the far side And out of play, it's going to be an 8-4 lead now for Fort Lee. And the service going back to Ramsey and Jessica Spirenberg. With the jump serve, Coelho diving to full extension. Set up in front, Conti pushing it over. Nice job again by Coelho. Ramsey not able to get it over in time, and now Fort Lee just enough to get it over. Coach Diemba was thinking it was a double hit, but eventually it leads to the point for Fort Lee. 9-4 lead now for the Bridgemen. So it looked like it initially was going to fall as a point. Ramsey rescued it, but then eventually Fort Lee does secure point number 9. Takes a 5-point lead here in set number 2. Spirenberg getting it over. Dropped over. Rue now keeping it alive. Nutriwani curling it away. And Nutriwani gets the point. 10-4 lead now for Fort Lee. As I mentioned in that opening set, this is much more like the quality of play we've come to expect from the defending sectional champs. After a rough outing last time out against Cliffside Park, much more competitive effort here today. And there's another ace and another time that Fort Lee is just cutting it so close, trickling off the top portion of the white net to get the points. And now a timeout taken by Ramsey and Coach Erin Schroeder, with her team facing their largest deficit at 7, 11-4. The lead for Fort Lee here in set number 2. They trail 1-0 here at East Gymnasium, where the Bridgemen have gone actually 3-6 so far this season. They've been much better on the road. The quirks of statistics, as Fort Lee has gone 7-2 on the road so far this fall, but 3-6 here at home. In the road ahead for both teams, for Ramsey after this one, they will go home to host Mahwah, while Fort Lee will hit the road to take on league rival Dwight Morrow on Friday. A win on the road on Friday would assure Fort Lee at least a share of the Big North American Division title. They could win it outright with either a Ridgeville Park or Dumont loss, or a win against Dumont here on October 22nd. So after the timeout, it will be Fort Lee with the serve, leading 11-4. Murtaugh serving. Out in front, trickled and falls in for the point. Colleen Post, number 15, the senior, getting that point, and now getting to serve for Ramsey, trailing by 6, 11-5. Back-to-back points now for Ramsey after that one hit into the top of the net. So a good timeout taken by Coach Schroeder. Little momentum stop there for Fort Lee. Back-to-back points taken in by Ramsey. 11-6 now, the deficit facing the visiting Rams. Nutriwani left it straight up to Murtaugh, and it was kept on going backwards, but then hit into the vent. And now it's 3 in a row for Ramsey, and momentum starting to shift a little bit after that timeout. It was 11-4. The lead has now been trimmed to 11-7. Post continue to serve, and that one gets a little bit of a roll as Fort Lee's been getting. It hit off the top of the nets and fell inside for the points. A 4-0 run here for Ramsey. Casal setting up Borisov to the near side, and the freshman hit it into the net. And now Coach Ziemba will take his own timeout to stop the run here for Ramsey. It was 11-4, 5 unanswered points for Ramsey, and put the Rams back in the thick of things here in set number 2. It's an 11-9 lead now for Fort Lee. Again, Fort Lee coming off an 11-6 season a season ago, where they claimed a share of the Big North American Division title, but then won the North 2 Group 2 Sectional Championship, which proved to be the first title for the volleyball program since 1988, when the Bridgemen won the Group 2 state championship that season in a win against the Boilermakers of Garfield High School. Ramsey last season went 5-7 overall and lost to Pascack Hills 2-1 in the first round of the North 1 Group 2 sectional playoffs. They will play to sectional, state, and the TOC this season after a shortened season last spring. As that one falls in for the point and the ace for Ramsey at 11-10. Pinpoint placement there down the near side as that will go for the ace, and now the run continues, 6-0 run for Ramsey. All started by this woman, Colleen Post. She made the play on defense and now has been serving up a storm as Rue gets it up and over. Ramsey trying to secure that tying point. Kept alive, but then it falls down after hitting into the ceiling. 12-10 lead now for Fort Lee. They finally stop that long sustained run for Ramsey, extending the lead back to 2 at 12-10. Conti dropping that one over to the near side and getting it just inside that back line. Ramsey trying to say that was clearly out. So the point is for Fort Lee, 13-10. Ramsey was trying to say that was out of bounds and that someone was saying that it was out of bounds, but again, it's the referee's decision, and his alone ruled that a point, and now another service ace for Fort Lee, who have taken the lead back at 14-10. Here in set number 2, Fort Lee needs the win to force a third and final set. Nice dig there by Nutrowani. Borisov as the libero on the other side. Garini getting into the action. Deflected in front. Good work by Conti. Rue gets it over. Nice volley here between the two sides. But there's the spike finish. As that time it was Bonnie Hira again finishing it off in front. Ramsey with a size advantage in this match. And when Hira has time and space to set herself, she has been unblockable here today. Only a junior for Coach Schroeder and Ramsey. 14-11, Ramsey trails and serves here. In front, Conti trying to get it over, but a lift call against Fort Lee. Again, that was that net front presence by Hira that affected Conti trying to get it up and over. And Hira comes up a little gimpy afterwards, will sub out. Might have rolled an ankle the way that she came down. So she'll come off the floor right now for Ramsey, as Ramsey is once again pulled back to within 2 at 14-12. So Hero will be attended to by the training staff here at Fort Lee. We resume play, 14-12, Ramsey trails. Murtaugh setting up Conti in front. To the back line, take it in by Spirenberg. Here's Spirenberg, too long on that one, that goes out. And it's a 15-12 lead now for Fort Lee. Fort Lee led late in the first set, but then Ramsey went on a run to eventually take home a 25-21 opening set victory. Fort Lee trying to force a third set here by taking set number 2. Mia Frankel back into the match. Frankel setting it up inside. There's Rue. Rue drops it over. Spirenberg collects. Over to the near side. Ramsey just gets it up and over. Ivazoglu. Pagan. That time a little better. Here's Pagan with a fadeaway. Spirenberg all over the back line. Ramsey hits it into the top of the net, though. So that long sustained run, and now they're going to say a whistle, and it's going to be against Fort Lee. So Fort Lee gets called for the violation in front. So no point for the Bridgemen there. That's a potential turn of events here. Instead of it being 16-12, it's 15-13, with Ramsey trailing once again by 2. And there's the ace. A primetime ace delivered up by Ava Pinsari, the junior, number 3. Ramsey back to within 1 now. 15-14 here in set number 2. Spirenberg falling backwards on a bad pass to her. Pagan getting it over, dropping it just inside the back line. So once again, give Fort Lee the 2-point advantage at 16-14 here in set number 2. As Nicole Coelho will now handle the service here. Trying to extend the lead, and she does just that with the ace for Fort Lee. 17-14, Bridgman on top. Coelho again. Dug out this time by Guarini. That one goes long and is out. So Fort Lee building their lead again, despite Ramsey pulling as close as 1. Now 3 unanswered points for the Bridgmen. 18-14 lead. Coelho mishits that serve. 18-15. Here in set number 2. Ramsey serving as Borisov takes it in. Anaya Jones got that past 2 defenders in front. Ramsey gets a piece, though, to secure the possession, and eventually it's finished off for the point by Spirenberg. (18-16), Ramsey back to within 2. But a service error there by Guarini gives the possession and the points to Fort Lee. Fort Lee back to within, or back on top by 3, 19-16. Casal with the serve. And a mistimed jump there in front by Spirenberg ended that opportunity. And now Fort Lee leading by 4 and 5 points away from capturing set number 2. They lead Ramsey 20-16. Casal a little too hard on that one, and Strong as that goes long with the service error. 20-17. This is where Ramsey made their run late in set number 1 when Fort Lee was ahead and were 5 points away from possibly taking set number 1. Ramsey rallied to win by 4. Pagan in front. Deflected away, Ramsey with it. And Spirenberg drops it diagonally cross court for the winner. Ramsey back to within 2 at 20-18. And a timeout taken by Coach Ziemba, with again him sensing potentially the momentum starting to shift here late in set number 2. His team had just been enjoying a 4-point lead. It's trimmed down in half to 2. 20-18. The score in favor of Fort Lee. They score 5 more points and hold on to win here. In the second set, it would force a third and final deciding set to decide who wins this important cross-divisional matchup late in the regular season. Again, on the line here, precious power points. Ramsey coming into today's game 7th in North 1 Group 2, and Fort Lee 9th heading into today's contest in North 1 Group 3. If you finish the regular season in one of the top 8 spots in your respective section, you are guaranteed to host at least one playoff game in the opening round, because the top 16 teams qualify in each section. So both teams seem to be safe in terms of making the postseason. Now it's trying to garner a home game. Out of the timeout, Anaya Jones setting us it down the near side. Ramsey collecting. Spirenberg falling away, and that one then is hit out of bounds off of Coelho. who was trying her darndest to keep it in play. So Ramsey again going on a run late here in the second set, 20-19. The Rams once again pulled to within one. Last time they pulled to within one, Fort Lee had the answer and went on a 3-0 run of their own. Borisov to the far side, handcuffing a bit. But then it's finished off again by Spirenberg. The senior leader for Ramsey have brought the Rams all the way back to tying it up at 20-20. 4 unanswered points in this match for Ramsey to come back to tie it up. They win set number 2. They win the overall match. Anaya Jones misjumped there, hit that into the net, and now Ramsey back in front, 21-20. Courtney Courier, number 4, the junior, serving. To the near side to Jones, just not able to get free there. It's now 22-20. Again, Anaya Jones, her first action back after having a knee injury that made her miss all of last season. One of the leaders in this program the first couple of years of her career. And there's Spirenberg again, and Ramsey like a machine. Once again, when it matters the most and it's money time, have come calling here, just as they did to end the first set. They've taken a 3-point lead, a 7-0 run for the Rams. 2 points away from the set victory and the match victory in the process. That one goes long, though, and Fort Lee now will have the point, pulls to within 2, and they look to go on a run here with Nicole Nutrawani serving. The senior had 20 service points against Ridgefield Park recently on October 8th. Spirenberg with a cross-court winner to the near side. As now we're at match point. 24-21, Ramsey a point away from winning 2-0 here on the road at Fort Lee. Jessica Spirenberg will handle the service. Borisov mishits it, and that will do it. So Ramsey in both of the sets took control after Fort Lee had the lead late in both of the sets. They were 5 points away each time from winning. But then Ramsey went on long runs to end sets number 1 and 2 and will win 2-0, winning in set number 1, 25-21, and an identical 25-21 victory here in set number 2. So with a victory, Ramsey will improve to 10-5 on the season. Fort Lee with the defeat will fall to 10-9 overall. The next match for Ramsey, they'll head home to host Mahwah on October 18th, while Fort Lee will next be in action in a big one for the Big North American Division. They'll hit the road on Friday afternoon to travel to Dwight Morrow. A win on the road on Friday would assure Fort Lee at least a share of the league championship, and they could then win it outright with a win against Dumont on home in their home concluding match on October 22nd. So again, the final score here from East Gymnasium, Ramsey 2, Fort Lee 0. For Dimitri Nanis, I'm Dan Long saying so long. You've been watching a production of Fort Lee Volleyball here on the Fort Lee Athletics YouTube channel. Take care, everybody.